Mike, would you read us back in, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I move the Roanoke County School Board come out of closed session for the following: for consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to actual or probable litigation, and the consultation of legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to 2.2-3711A of 7 of the Code of Virginia. And I move to certify that to the best of knowledge, every member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempt from open meeting requirements under this chapter, and only such business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the school board.
Thank you.
Second that.
All right, Madam Clerk?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. And there was no action from closed, so we don't need to do anything from there, right?
No.
Okay, let's start with our information items. 3.01 CTE Center Traffic Study Recommendations. Mr. Todd Kegels and Mr. Chris Burns.
Yes, sir. As a part of the rezoning process, we employ Balzer and Associates to represent us in the rezoning piece, and as part of that, conduct a traffic study. And so we've invited Mr. Burns to come today because there's been some public interest in the traffic study piece to come and present their findings.
Thank you, Todd. Just to kind of give some background, Todd gave a little bit of it, but we've been working for the last 3+ months to kind of initiate the rezoning process with Roanoke County, and a big piece of that is the traffic study. So typically, the ideal order of things is to do the traffic study before we file for the rezoning, so that we can incorporate any comments that VDOT may have. Traffic is always a big item in any rezoning, and so it's always good if you can kind of get that taken care of before you file. So we started the traffic work in early April. We've done traffic counts on site and also at the existing Burton Center to kind of model the traffic that we expect to have from the new CTE facility. That study was submitted on June 1st initially to VDOT. We received comments on the 16th, and then we resubmitted on the 30th of June. So we're in our second review with them. All of that's kind of leading up to a initial rezoning filing with Roanoke County that is planned for tomorrow. And so with that being said, I'll kind of go through just kind of the highlights of what was included in the study. So the first thing is the county had expressed a desire for a traffic signal at the entrance to the site, which is across from Alpine Road on Peters Creek. VDOT historically has been a little bit reluctant to approve new signals on what they consider to be their more major corridors. And so we had an initial meeting with them to kind of talk through that. Based on that initial discussion, VDOT indicated that they thought they could support a signal at this location from a safety standpoint, with some caveats. One was that we, submit the study to show how it will function. And then secondly, they wanted to utilize what's called a reduced phase signal. And so what's proposed at this site is what's called a through-cut intersection. And basically what that means is from Alpine Road and from the site, you won't be able to make a straight-through movement across Peters Creek Road. What that does is it allows the traffic from Alpine and from the site to go at the same time. You'll still have right and left turn movements in and out from both of those streets. But it allows all of that traffic to move at the same time, which preserves more green time for the traffic on Peters Creek, which is VDOT's main goal. Another another kind of request that we got in meeting with county planning staff, they requested a new sidewalk to be built along the frontage of Peters Creek Road. I believe it's the Hollins Center Plan or something like that. One of the initiatives in that plan is to provide pedestrian improvements in this area. And with this being a county project, the thought was that, it'd be a good faith effort to provide that. So,
Why wouldn't the county provide that? Why would they expect the schools to do it? Because it's a development,
I think because it's a development, yeah.
and they can get us while we're there.
Well, so, as of right now, we are planning to show that. There's nothing in this rezoning filing that promises that. And so I think that can still be a discussion topic. And it's really unrelated to the traffic. I just wanted to note it because it was something that had come up in our
Right,
discussion.
that's just gonna be an extra. Mr. Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How far will it go, just for the property that we own? I mean, what is a sidewalk if it's just, I don't understand.
It would be along the frontage of the property, and really what it
Will
would
it
be.
take in Bojangles or any others? No.
So it could connect up to Bojangles, but there's no, as far as I know, there's no sidewalk from the Bojangles restaurant
No.
down to the road. So I completely understand where you're coming from.
Now, this is customary in the city, but we're not in the city.
Is it?
That's correct. This would really be, I guess the best way to describe it is this would be kind of a head start towards a larger goal that Roanoke County has.
It reminds me of the book
pedestrian
by Shel
improvements.
Silverstein,
What's that?
Where the Sidewalk Ends. Sorry, because we're in education, I just had to throw that out there. Where does it end? Where the sidewalk ends? Yeah, well,
It's not an easy section of sidewalk to build, particularly between the entrance and Bojangles.
And that's beat up property, because they're gonna
Correct.
have 25 feet from the center line, right?
Correct. It would be in the right of way.
So they'll be,
It's not gonna be cheap.
Well, the main cost associated with it, from my perspective, is gonna be the earthwork
Sure.
and the utility relocation. I think that you're gonna have to do that anyways, to get sight distance from that entrance.
When you say sight distance, do you mean sight view on the road?
Correct.
Because isn't that pretty straight?
If you're sitting at the light, at the new light,
Whoa.
exiting the site, looking to the left, it kind of curves back around, so it's difficult to see that direction. So for example, if you were taking a right on red, you'd need to be able to see if anybody was coming, and I think you'd have to cut that bank back in order to do that.
how close is this signal to the current where you go up and turn around and come back? Because we know how dangerous that is, because there are a lot of people doing that and trying to get back in the flow going west, I guess you'd call it.
Are you talking about the crossover at Bojangles?
Yeah, probably, yeah, that's probably the one.
I think they're about 640 feet apart.
So they would still have that crossover and a signalization?
Yes, and I should note,
You would think that that would be a lane, that would be a turning lane that you'd get over into to get to the signalization. I mean, for that distance. I don't know, I'm just trying to figure it in my mind.
yes, so as part of the proposed improvements, we would need to install a new right turn lane into the site and a new left turn lane into the site in the median. So those,
But that wouldn't take in that turnaround that people are doing, right?
correct, that would still be there.
Well, would that encourage our students to say, I'm gonna do turnaround and not go to the light?
I'm not.
Or is it far enough away? I mean,
not-
I'm trying to
not
think about
100%
our
following,
students'
but-
safety coming out of the site. They're gonna go beyond that turn then, is that correct? The turnaround,
When you say turnaround, like where do you mean exactly?
where they go and they're gonna go up and turn back around and go back west.
Yeah, I think if
They,
if I
they can
understood
go
Mr. Ray-
left or they can go
Yeah.
east or west. They
That's a
just can't
line.
go straight through.
Yeah.
That's a light,
So
they'll
you-
be able to turn left at the light.
You can
Yeah.
go
Oh,
across
I know
and
the
turn
light, but where the current existing where they go to get back west. Is that, our light will be beyond that, correct?
Mike, let me ask this, because I think I understand what you're saying. Didn't you say we can't cross, we're not gonna be able to cross Peters Creek, so we've got to go down
No.
to come back? I thought that's, and that's
No,
what you're,
you-
I think
I'm
that's
just
what
trying to
he's,
figure out
If
that.
you're leaving the site, you will be able to go right or left onto Peters Creek.
Okay.
You will not be able to go straight across to Alpine.
oh, God, so you don't
So you
have
don't
to
need
do
to
what
turn
you're
around.
thinking.
Okay.
Yes.
So, sorry if that
Well,
was.
You
yeah,
just-
I kind
Alright.
of took it that way too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
You
so
have
you
to
will
make
be
the
able to make
decision.
rights and lefts
Yeah.
into or out of the site.
Okay,
Yes.
just can't go across to Alpine.
Correct.
Okay.
So that'll eliminate what, right.
Yeah, I just don't want the safety of the students being able to not, hey, I gotta decide on this one or I go to the next one.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
gotcha.
One question for you, Chris. Do you know if on the new development that they're doing down at Southern Team, do you know if they're making them put sidewalks in there?
We did that. I will need to check on that.
Because that's a whole lot closer to that Hollins Greenway. I know they
V-
on where,
VDOT is doing some improvements down there. I don't believe the development is installing sidewalks. I would need to check. VDOT's doing some work along that road. I just don't remember if it includes
Good
sidewalks or
question.
not.
because where the
That-
Dunkin'
that
Donuts
project
went
was-
in, I mean, you got Dunkin' and what Quick Development went in there, there is a 80-foot piece of sidewalk that I don't know if the county required that they do with that part of the development, but if they're making them do it down there, and I'm infinitely familiar with that, with not only the intersection there at Alpine, because that's where I come out of every day, multiple times, but that area right there. So, I mean, if they're making them do it down there at Southern Team, where they've got that huge development going in,
Large traffic count, yeah.
So, yeah, and this is something that the county cannot force a private development to do if they're by right. Well, they can't force them to do it anyways, but because if a private developer was doing a rezoning on this parcel, I think they would request the same thing, and then it would be up to the developer as to whether or not they wanted to offer that as a.
Good.
So this is really similar to that.
So I think it's helpful to know at least this piece of it, and I can't remember the road frontage length and what that sidewalk would cost us. Because I can't imagine that's a small number, not that it's a huge number either, but
Right,
nonetheless, it comes out of our project if we
yeah.
start.
Yeah, and I don't know what that frontage is off the top of my head either.
And I know from the town of Vinton, we've got numerous grants to put in sidewalk and corridors and all that stuff. So if somebody from the county would look into that, they can probably get the grants to do this without, and spend state or federal money instead of trying to use school funding.
Bike lanes.
Yeah, absolutely, but to ask, again, that's a whole nother issue, but to ask us to do it seems a little disingenuous, but
Right.
nonetheless.
Well, just so you guys know what we have in here, we have a concept plan in there. We do have sidewalks shown on that concept plan. Nothing in here promises that that will be done.
If you could get us that number would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
I,
Thank you.
one
Yes,
question, I
Mr.
guess
Wright.
this is a $90 million question, but what, is there any way that, and it sounds like maybe a dumb question, any way that this would not get rezoned?
So what?
not get rezoned.
That's up to the Board of Supervisors.
It's,
You gotta ask, right?
yeah, no, it's a good question.
That's what I think, because you never know what, I mean, is there something that the property or something that we just didn't missed
Think about.
that wouldn't allow us to, I'm not saying the Board of Supervisors, I'm not
no.
asking towards them, I'm just saying, or the Planning Commission or whatever that might be looking at this, is there any something somewhere that says, wait a minute, you gotta do this in additional?
So, I guess I'll answer that question this way. So, we feel like the project that you all are proposing is in line with what's in the comprehensive plan. And we've stated as such in our rezoning narrative. Obviously, the final decision lies with the board. But the majority of the property, or a portion of the property is already zoned C1, which is what this use requires. And the majority of the building and the parking lot is going to be in that area that's already zoned C1. So, really, assuming that we file tomorrow, the process will be, county will review and accept the application. They'll schedule a neighborhood meeting or a community meeting where, anybody can come out and hear about the project and ask questions or, state concerns or whatever they want to do. And I think really, a lot of the rest of this process will probably depend on the feedback that is received, and whether or not we feel a need to respond to that feedback.
Any questions, guys?
Nope.
What? No?
No?
You didn't you don't like my question? I mean, you know.
Well, I don't think.
It's the planning
again, I
commission.
agree with him. I don't think it's the board. I think it would be
No, it'd be whatever that they would come up with. They may find something that's attached to the back of the property that you needed to purchase this, to rezone this, because C1 is C1. We know that. And that's acceptable in this, certainly in this.
Yeah, we have not seen anything or heard anything from planning staff that would indicate that there are any major concerns at this point. So.
Anything else?
I think, really just, we talked about the turn lanes that are recommended in the traffic study. The proposed intersection design that we have in here functions very, very well. Peters Creek Road functions very, very well with those improvements. So the comments that we received from VDOT that we've responded to, I would say are minor in nature. It's more just, modeling details and things like that. So we're expecting concurrence with our study very soon from them. After that, I think the next step with VDOT is a follow-up conversation to confirm where this puts us with, them approving a signal here, and the other documentation that we've submitted to them as part of it, along with the traffic study, is an access management exception request. And what that is for is, it just has to do with separation between entrances along the corridor. There's no reason that I wouldn't expect that to be approved as part of this. And so those are kind of the next steps from our side.
Well, thank
But
you.
everything's tracking as we would hope, so.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I did one more question. The numbers that we are presenting to them, do they include an increase in what we currently have at BCAT? Because it's going to be a larger facility? Did we go 120% of our current numbers, or?
So we increased the traffic from what we counted at BCAT by 10%.
10%.
And that was based on feedback that we received as far as projected possible increases in enrollment.
Thank you. We
Thank you.
appreciate that. Item 3.02, surplus vehicles. Mr. Kegels?
Yes, sir. The list of vehicles that we're proposing for surplus is available in board docs. There's 9 of them. The 8 of them are old school buses. Most
Can
of
we
them
see
are-
a picture of number one?
I don't actually have a photograph of number 1. We have number 1's.
Is that the,
But yes, that's the.
Is that the
that's Buick
vacation?
station wagon?
I believe there's a picture on here.
What's that?
I thought there was a picture. Oh, there's not a picture.
No, just the,
This is
just its information.
I can't believe they're letting that go.
the vintage wagon.
No, Chuck's got them up. Yes, that's the vintage wood grain sided station wagon, so.
Oh, that's
it is
an
now up for surplus.
antique now.
Yes, sir, if you.
Did
if you'd like to
Jason and
have
Mark,
it,
did
you
Mr.
know,
Sir and Mr.
Make you a deal.
Did they have a, pity party going?
They're lodging a protest or camped out back there as we speak, daring us.
It's
to,
hilarious. They were proud of that vehicle.
They probably hit it already.
No,
Our fleet manager actually thinks that we might get a little bit of money for that vehicle.
antique-ish. That's pretty cool.
Well, it's
From
a
Jeff Terry?
station wagon. Yeah.
Jeff
Yeah.
Terry.
Mecum auctions or something, you know, they'll.
You never know.
All right, any questions?
No, sir.
No.
And so we,
Item 3.03, various project. Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
guess we're supposed to recommend for that to be on the consent agenda.
Oh, okay.
for the next
Yes.
meeting.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Yeah. Various project updates, Mr. Kegels.
Yeah, Chuck, can I, yeah, it's plugged in. Okay, that's me.
Technology.
One second. Okay, there we go.
I don't know why we can't get this fan here fixed. This-
Okay, so, you know, at any given time, we probably have, I don't know, just guessing, we probably have 50 different things, you know, project-wise going on at any given time. These are just some of the kind of highlights, and if you have questions about any that are not on the list, you know, certainly feel free to ask. On the elementary renovations in the CTE Center, the solicited proposals are due to us August 25th at 2:00 PM. That was 60 days from the day that we that published that. The NESHAP report is underway at the elementary schools. We're actually supposed to have that on Monday, or at least sometime early next week. That's the asbestos report that we're doing for the 2 elementary schools to try to avoid a situation like what we have at Byrd with their renovation. The site survey, I think you heard Chris may have said something about that right at the beginning there. It's actually just about finished down here at Glen Cove. We're supposed to have those drawings next week. And then Cundiff will finish up in a couple of weeks or so. We'll have, you know, the surveys will be done. We did hold a pre-proposal meeting for those projects where the contractors can come and ask questions. We did that yesterday. We did have multiple contractors and groups attend, so we're hopeful that we will get, you know, more than the one proposal that we already have. CTE Center, I did take a couple of pictures here. I don't know if you're familiar with what that property looked like not long ago. It was completely overgrown. You couldn't even see the house. Our guys have been out there clearing it so that they can do the survey work, and they've been clearing all around the perimeter of the property and some you know, some larger tracts that they asked us that Balzer asked us to clear so that they could do that. So you can see they made a lot of progress clearing that. You couldn't even walk through these sections before the guys got started out there. And they're just about done. I think Chris said the survey would be done in the next 2 to 3 weeks out there. You heard Chris talk about the rezoning that we have going on and the July 14th application, and then the meetings on the 6th and the 25th. The artificial turf out at Northside, this picture is actually a few days old, so they've made more progress even than where they are there. They've got most of the turf laid out. They're gluing the seams together. Then they'll come down the sidelines. That's actually what you see over here on the left is the gravel. So they come in, they scoop out all the dirt. This is a simplified version of what they're doing, but they scoop out all the dirt. They put down gravel and the drainage system. Then they put down this rubber pad, which is the white area that you see there. Then they roll out the grass on it, glue all of those seams together, and then there's giant bags of sand and rubber sitting all around the field over there. They come in and they put that back into the artificial turf and sweep it, and you know, that's kind of makes the grass stand up, and that's what you play on. Everything seems to be going well so far. They insist that they're going to be done. Their due date is July 31st. They insist that they're going to be done by then. We do have some repairs to do to the fencing and the track surface. It's kind of to be expected. I mean, moving all that equipment across the rubber track, they've done a little bit of damage here and there. So, you know, we do have plans to make those repairs. Those probably will not be done by July 31st, or by July 31st, but they'll be done before, before the track is needed. All the drainage work has been done over there. It all seems to be working very well. You know, when we have had rain recently, it all seems to be working very well. So I would say that project is, you know, right where it needs to be. On the William Byrd High renovations, the asbestos abatement is about halfway done. The expected completion date is September 28th. The gym floor, let's see, I did get some pictures. The new gym floor is in terms of the wood. It's all been installed, all the subfloors in, all of the hardwood is in. It obviously hasn't been finished yet, but the painting is finished in there also. All of the ceiling and new duct work and all of that stuff is in. It looks really good.
Did they season the wood?
What's
Don't
that?
know.
Did they season the wood?
I hope so.
Oh, yeah, for quite a bit of time, actually.
Okay.
Set in there for a long time. And I know where you're going with that, and we're still working on it over at Cave Spring also.
I was going to
did,
joke with you, Todd, and ask you, did they get wheels for the bleachers?
Oh, yes, yes. Well,
How about ball bearings? They have ball bearings?
yeah. Actually, I don't think those wheels have ball bearings in them. You think for what they cost. they
300
would,
of them?
but
That's
they
gonna reduce our home court advantage too, because there were some dead spots we knew where they were that they couldn't bounce the
Uh-oh.
ball.
That's right. You can kind of force people into those areas.
Giving away the secrets of the coach secrets.
Secret sauce.
So this is, Mr. Greenway, I know you'd be interested in this. This is the retracting goals they're in. Okay, so they've been installed and they're working. Now they've been tested, but the electrical wiring isn't finished yet. So the mechanical pieces are in and they work. We're just waiting for the electrical work to be finished, and then they'll, have retracting goals in there. The main office should be done by August the 1st. Ms. Newcomb had some specific concerns. She needed hers to be done by September 25th or by July 25th, so they are working to make sure she can get in her office by July 25th. And then the cafeteria is expected to be done by August 1st. It's nearly done.
Todd, just a couple quick questions. One, I rode by there a night or two ago. I noticed the front is pretty much finished, right?
Yeah. The entrance.
And I think they're still using a staging area in the lobby area and stuff, but when I walk back to see the gym. Will they be able to access that lobby now when the school opens? Because I know they're gonna be down the corridor, on that corridor.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they probably, this is probably the question I have on this. I'd love for the seniors and different ones to be able to access that front lobby area and be able to utilize the, I don't know what we're gonna call that, the little outside piece,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I think the answer is yes, but I'm not sure. I think that part of the building is supposed to be turned over to us before school starts, but I'll verify that with, we have Mike Kaufman on site there every day. I'll check with Mike and make sure.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Over at Glenver Elementary School, I didn't know Mr. Hudson was not going to be here. This is kind of his, so I wanted to show him this, our progress on that. But just so everybody else knows where we are on it, that courtyard, remember, was a complete mess. It kind of still is, except this actually represents a lot of progress. All the HVAC units have been moved out of there. The playground equipment has been installed, and it still looks rough because they haven't put the port in place down there. That was actually supposed to start today. They've been delayed until, they say, Monday. But they'll come in and take all of this old mulch, dirt, and grass out and then put down that rubber port in place all the way out to the sidewalks on all four sides. It's going to be really nice. And like I said, all the equipment's already been installed. Remember, that's a preschool playground in that little area, so it's going to be really nice. And it's right on target to be finished by, assuming the guys show up when they're supposed to be there with the port in place. It's right on target to be done on time.
Todd, one more quick question. This relates to Herman L. Horn, since you're talking about playground equipment. I've seen that as I go by every day. It's been sitting out there for about a week. How long before they come? And I guess it's their turn in the process.
Yeah, and that's actually right here under Phase 2. Cave Spring Elementary School is substantially complete. All of Phase 1 stuff is done, right?
Gotcha.
So that's all that up there. Cave Spring Elementary School is the one that they did first for Phase 2, and it's pretty much done. And then this is, I think, laid out in order that the installation goes from there. These two, at Glenver and Mountain View, those have already been delivered, and they're starting on the installation there. And then comes Fort Lewis, Herman L. Horn, and then Back Creek. Yes, sir.
If there's any way, it'd probably be nice just to have it out of the way before school starts. That's why I was asking.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I doubt that will be done before school starts. I mean, we're 4 weeks out or so before school starts.
Okay.
They've got, what, 1, 2, 3 playgrounds to do ahead of that one. Is it?
Well, even the other, I mean, not just that one now that I just didn't know where the others were at. I just see that one. But yeah, even Fort Lewis and Back Creek, I'd be nice. Again,
Oh, sure.
there's a process, I know, so.
Sure. And, because of the number that they did, they just went, so they laid it out sequence and just, went sequentially there. And they've been working all summer. It's not like,
Sure.
That stuff's really been delayed by
Well,
very
we
much.
had the 2 years.
Although there are
to-
missing parts and things like that, that keep happening, but, they are working through sequentially.
All good.
The Vinton bus lot, we have published the RFP a couple of days ago, determined the scope of work. We've had some interest, some folks that have called and asked questions about those jobs. We are holding any like contracts or anything like that until the state has resolved the budget issues. Let's see. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay. All right, some other minor capital projects. The Oak Grove Elementary School sanitary line, that one's, the plumbing's done. It's actually working. I thought you might be interested in just how big a project this really was since, we had to pay for this out of minor capital. You guys, yeah, you see the scope of the disturbance there. This is after it's been filled back in. It's quite large. And to give you an idea how deep this was, you can see him down in the hole there. So, yeah, this was a big project.
It's below freeze line.
Yeah, it was a big project to get down there. All of these concrete structures had to be replaced, and it's just about done. The only thing that's left to do now is go back and fix the sidewalks and fix the grass. Sidewalks should be back in place. The grass should be seeded, before school starts. So that'll be good, at least in terms of the sanitary line. Shouldn't have any problems this year. Down at Burlington, this is what the floor used to look like, right, at the start of the summer. Put a nice new floor coating on down there.
Nice.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, looks really good. We need to do some paint down there on the walls, but the floor looks really good now. Now, down at Glen Cove, again, I thought you might be interested in the size of this project. You see how this is the kitchen, and you see how the floor's been cut up all along these gravel trenches, and then the drain line that is in there has been replaced. So that was a huge project.
Shame to have to do that ahead of construction. I guess it's really. Oh, they had to, yeah.
I'm not sure what happens with my pictures. Every now and then, one of them causes it to shut down, but
They're good pictures, though.
yeah, thank you.
It's helpful to see them.
Yeah. Let's hope that one opens. Yeah. And so there's the guys putting the concrete back. So they cut up all that floor, put all that concrete back down, which is done now. These pictures are a few days old. Concrete's back in. Our guys will come back in and put the tile back in. And then as soon as they put the tile in, they'll start moving the equipment back in, all of the kitchen equipment back in. And then you see all this stuff hanging out of the ceiling. All that stuff has to be wired back up because it was in the floor, and they had to cut through some of that stuff, so they're going to run it overhead now. So still should all be done before school starts. Shouldn't impact the opening of the school. Glenboro Elementary School, we actually thought we were going to connect that to public water today. There's one part called a saddle that didn't come in, so now the plan is for next Thursday. Takes 2 days, Thursday and Friday. We'll eliminate the well service for them and connect them to public water.
That's great.
Yeah, and then the sale of Pogue Farm, we did have to put out an RFP to be able to hire a real estate agent, so we did that. We're actually evaluating the proposals now, and then we'll have to interview those folks and then choose a realtor. We have informed the current tenant that we'll grant him access through January of 2024 to remove his crops, equipment, and personal property if he agrees to sign the month-to-month lease, which he has not done yet. So We'll be, after, we've made that public now, so we'll contact him tomorrow and make sure that he's, actually going to sign that and make a decision where we go from there. So that's kind of where we are on those projects. Lots of other stuff going on, if you have any questions about anything.
Any questions, guys?
Can I clarify one thing? Is that through January or until January?
Well, we think he needs through January, through the end of January.
Once a month. That's
That
this-
won't preclude us from actually putting it on the market, though.
No, we would just make that a condition of the sale.
Right. Thank you, Todd. We appreciate everything.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Let's see, 3.04, new policy and AR for on-call emergency callback maintenance program.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cables.
During the adoption of the 2023-24 annual budget, the school board approved funds for an on-call emergency callback maintenance program that designate an employee to be available outside of their regular work schedule. The employee will be paid wages for time worked plus an extra stipend for their on-call time. The attached policy establishes the program, and the administrative regulations establishes parameters of the program. So you have that in front of you there. That's the hard copy that I gave you. If you have any questions about that, happy to answer them.
The only question I think I have, and then I'll let the others, is do we have a budgetary amount that we're including for this? And it's already.
It was included in the
was
budget.
already in,
We just
okay.
didn't have a policy to set out the procedures by which this is going to work. We
Right,
had
so
to-
it's already included though?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Guys, any questions?
No,
Nope.
I think it's a great idea.
Thank
We
you.
would
Great.
request that that be put on the consent agenda for the next meeting.
Consent agenda.
Okay, yep, thank you. All right, consolidation and revisions to policies on patriotism, Superintendent Nicely.
So we got 305 first, sir.
You got through.
Did I miss one?
Yes, sir. 305.
Well, I meant to. No.
Go.
Revision,
Revision.
no, kidding. Revision to policy 6.16, final assessments and exemptions. Dr. Rhonda Stegall.
All right.
That's what I give, we're going back to my computer.
All right, so this policy, I want to talk a little bit about some history behind this policy, just so we all know where we're at, because there's been quite a bit of change over time. So the final assessments are teacher-designed assessments, and they are given at the conclusion of the second semester of four-year classes. The purpose of these assessments is to demonstrate cumulative mastery of course content and related skills. The final assessment may be traditional test or a performance-based assessment under the current regulations once a student completes a class. There was discussion at the June 2023 work session about the interest of raising standards for final assessments. The staff presented detailed information about current grading practices, and work begun in 2022 to revise those practices and the overall direction recommended for revising grading policy for the implementation of the 24-25 school year. In a previous work session in which the elimination of this policy that we're going to talk about today was discussed, the school board consensus was to raise the standards for final assessments rather than eliminate them and incorporate a revised final assessment policy into the overall revision of the grading practices. Work groups at the elementary and secondary level have begun work on the overall grading policy. As an initial shift on the final exemption or final exam policy, the secondary work group recommended for the 23-24 school year to go ahead and do three things. One, eliminate exam exemption for all students except seniors. Two, reestablish attendance requirements for seniors, senior exam exemption. And three, raise the uniform standard for how much weight for the final exam carries. Currently, it states teacher discretion, no more than one test grade for the fourth 9 weeks, and make a change to where that says across the board, we want across the board standard of having the final exam count as a major test in the fourth 9 weeks. So the major change there is seniors would be the only ones allowed for exemption. We would add back attendance. The reason attendance was not in there is because of COVID. That was the only reason. And then the third change would be, rather than having the final assessment be at teacher discretion and an assignment at the fourth 9 weeks, it will now be standard across the board, and it will be a major test grade in the fourth 9 weeks. So those are the changes that we're talking about. This will be a major shift for many classes and will move us back towards final exams actually having meaningful weight. The reason we came to the board and asked to remove this policy is because the final assessment policy, final assessments had lost its meaning because it had deteriorated to the point where it was no longer valuable process. So that was the reason we were bringing that forward, also knowing that we were about to change the grading policy. For the following school year and anticipated adoption of the completely new grading policy, staff anticipates a recommendation that final exams go back to possibly carrying a weight of 10% of the semester grade. Just to put that in context, in the 1990s, the exams were weighing 20% of the grade. So we're still not where we were then. However, that was before SOL testing. Staff presents the recommended changes in exam policy as listed in parts 1, 2, and 3 above for implementation in the upcoming school year. We would recommend that you take action to adopt this change at the July 27 regular meeting in order for teachers to include this information on the course syllabi. So one additional consideration that the board may want to think about during this discussion is there could be some thought around should the final assessments be just for all classes or just for non-SOL classes? So that is another, something else to think about in this discussion.
Thank you. Any questions, discussion?
I'll just add, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Ray?
You want to add first?
Well, I was just going to add as a follow-up, Dr. Segal's right. And we were all, principals as this changed over time, and then, in the instruction department and so forth. And so the philosophy, it just changed over time. I think when, SOL testing really didn't come into full force until, the late 90s and then, later. So I think probably this changed, in sort of in concert with that. So the idea of, do we go back? If it's important, I think, to have, if we're going to do exams, we need to account for something. I mean,
Sure.
we all agree about that. I think there is an argument to be made, and you could go either way on this. Would you want to do it? Include it in the SOL tested courses at the high school level? That's a limited number of courses.
Mm-hmm.
You've got your English classes, your math, your U.S. history, your biology, everything else. Is all this only counts for credit-bearing classes at the high school level, and then those credit-bearing classes, they're at the middle school too. So your algebra, your geometry at the middle school level, this would be included in that. So for so all your credit-bearing classes, which is every class at high school, would have a final exam that actually counts for something. Again, you could debate whether or not do you want to think about whether it should be applicable to those with SOL tests or not. And the rationale for if you think about it that way would be, for the students who do well in their SOL tests, it's not a problem. For those who are not passing that test, and then we have to turn around and remediate them and do the retakes, we want that to be a focus, for those students to get that SOL test passed, which is crucial to them as well as, for the schools. But, you could debate that either way, but that was something that I know some people had expressed interest in considering.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
or Vice Chairman. So would that be something that would be written in a policy later in the grading policy, or would you want to add that into this here?
I would, if you were so inclined, I think we need to go ahead and put it in.
So
But I could see, it's a debate, it's philosophical, but.
it really is. We didn't talk about this the
Right.
other day. The SOLs are it's a minimal standard, really. It's not that, I mean, sure, a lot of people have struggles,
For the
but-
students who struggle to pass and to get their graduation credit, I mean, those are the ones who,
Yeah, so if you have an A in the class, it's probably not gonna be that hard for you to take the SOL.
Sure.
If you've done your work. If you have a B in the class, it's probably not gonna be that hard for you to pass the SOL. If you have a C in the class, that's the kid that's going to probably need remediation on the SOL, I would guess. So is there a downside to having the kids, what time are you taking away by making the kid take that final assessment? Because really, in theory,
they should align.
they should align. So it's an hour of extra time that a kid's spending taking the test? Is that the problem? I don't understand what the downside. So if a kid does have test anxiety, and you could even argue the kids that have test anxiety, well, here's a test, it's just prepare yourself. And I think there's a lot of tests and exams in life, and you get better at them the more you take them.
Sure.
Some kids don't. And there's different types of assessments, so these aren't all exams.
And to
Really,
your-
for like quote-unquote exams or assessments, and some of them might be a research paper that needs to be handed in on that day, right?
Sure.
Or a project, so it's not just multiple choice exams. There's other ways I think it gives those kids who are struggling, who have a C, to boost up their grade with a final assessment that could actually benefit them. We shouldn't always look at it as a test. It's actually a way to benefit these kids to pull up their grades. So anyway, but I
Yeah,
interrupted.
and once the this got on the agenda, it was publicized, we had some teachers email in and say, hey, could y'all think about it? So yeah, it's not something we had really thought carefully about or
Yeah.
much about before. I think you can make an argument either way, but you're exactly right. Those final assessments should align with the SOL test anyway. It should be the same content, so you could see it as extra practice.
It should be, yeah, in theory. And then again, with the SOLs, some people are a fan of SOLs, some people aren't a fan of SOLs. I think there's good and bad to them. I think over COVID, we saw how valuable they were because they really were able to show us where we were winning and where we were losing. But at the end of the day, I think it'd be hard then we're gonna ask our principals to go ahead and decide which kids are exempt, because not every kid takes an SOL for you have to get one English, one math, right? One history. So then you're gonna have some kids that are taking a final assessment and some that aren't, because that's the SOL for that class. I just don't know
Yeah, it does.
logistically
Yeah.
how that makes sense. Because it's only 5 SOLs they have to take, and a lot of kids qualify for those SOLs in 7th and 8th grade, or at least 8th grade, at least a math
Right.
maybe, or.
And I think this is mostly, a high school issue. I mean, the credit-bearing classes in middle school were algebra and geometry. Those students are past those SOLs, because they're advanced math students.
Kids.
By and large, so.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem with the kids, some kids are just good at school and some are not. The kids who are not so good at school, what happens is they take the SOL, they fail it. They were pulled out of their classroom and remediated lots of times, so they're missing review for exams. They're missing strengthening the content. They're focused on the SOL prep. So then they retake the SOL, let's say they don't do well again, and then we're constantly
that.
putting pressure on those kids, and then they're gonna turn around and come right back and sit for a final. It's just a lot of pounding on that kid.
Yes, it is.
And it's just over and over and over, and kids who fail, we're repeating that failure for them over and over and over. So that would be the argument for the kids who just aren't good at school. And these are also typically kids, not typically, but sometimes kids who aren't college bound. They're not going to need to move forward, but they do need to graduate, and they do need to have that SOL for verified credit.
So how much
So-
does that 10% of the grade, let's say they're only gonna end up with a C on that 10% anyway, how much is that really hurting them or helping them? I mean, is it gonna hurt or help? I guess that's the question.
It just depends, because if they're struggling, if the teacher sets the exam bar at where they should, the kid's also gonna struggle with the final assessment. If it's at the same standard as the SOL, they're clearly gonna continue to struggle. Because what the teachers do when they do the SOL, they zero in on the very tiny concepts that the kid's missing to pass that SOL. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna be 100% aligned with that final assessment, or that assessment that the teacher's giving. It's not exactly the same thing.
So I think what we're trying to do with all the department heads is have them come together, like math or science, for example, and create one consistent exam that they would give per department, right? That's what I would favor if possible, but that would make sense if we're putting together a grading policy that is consistent across all schools.
It does. Well, at the very least, you want those exams to be vetted so that they're all with consistent level of rigor, right? Because you don't want, when you somebody give them one exam that's like, significantly harder or easier than somebody else. I still have nightmares from college from one of those departmental exams in calculus, and so I have a bias about that. But, because, you get used to the way your teacher tests, and then you have one that you can be thrown a curveball if you have a departmental exam that, things are worded differently and so forth. Again, my own personal issue in calculus in college. But I think you absolutely do have to make sure that even if they're not completely standardized, that they are standardized at the same level of rigor, and that's essential.
Well, and they're gonna have to pass both, or not necessarily, but they're gonna have to take both. So bringing those together, wouldn't it make sense? Isn't that what you're
To
suggesting?
to have it in SOL tested classes, or
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I honestly have a hard time making a recommendation. I mean, I think from a high school principal's perspective, you see, what students are struggling with to graduate, haven't done that, but.
But you're still gonna have to remediate if they fail that.
You do.
For the SOLs anyway, so to me, it's one less test if we can combine those in a way that's meaningful and purposeful. That, and it wasn't that many years ago when I was running for the board that we had all those people in here because of all the SOL testing that was going on. I'm just thinking if that's one way of putting it together that reduces a little bit of that stress and does the same thing.
Or you can make it so that you're exempt if it is an SOL test that you're taking.
Right.
And you pass that test, you are then exempt from that SOL, but it can't be for every 4-credit class that is also an SOL class. Do you
Oh,
follow what I'm
no,
saying?
no.
It can only be, so you're not double dipping.
That's right.
Right.
And
exactly.
I would be,
Exactly.
I would be fine with that, and it would have to go through a process where the principals and the counselors sit together and say, okay, well, how many people do we have taking this class for an SOL? Okay, so therefore you will be exempt. But then, how do you work out that grading? It just,
And I could be wrong, but.
or you get, if you pass or pass advanced, you get a B versus an A added to that. That's the 10%. I mean, those are, not to get lost in the weeds, but
It would probably just not be added in. It wouldn't exist.
But Dr.
Just
Stahl,
disappear.
would I be wrong in saying that most of our teachers at the high school level would be in favor of something like that?
I think they would be in favor of not exempting those who have SOL classes.
A lot of focus on the SOL.
They really
tests.
focus on the SOL because that's the priority. You need to get those kids passing that SOL, so that's a verified credit, and they have to have that right out of the gate. So I think the focus really does need to be on that, and I think those classes, that's where we need to keep the focus. Classes who do not have SOL testing, I think that they would be okay with the final assessment.
Okay.
but there's only 5 classes
makes
throughout
sense.
all of high school to get the verified credit, so it's not that many.
That's right.
It'd be.
So to drop it, to give that kid the gift of pass the SOL,
Right.
That's right.
For
There-
most classes, you're still raising the standard by bringing exams.
you're still
back.
raising the standard, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So it's.
And I'm okay with that. I just,
Yeah,
it
I
can't be
am too.
across, it just can't be across the board. And I would just add that the process when this started and that initial policy was brought forth was shocking to me because, in my opinion, we want to always raise expectations. And when we raise expectations of our students, they're going to meet them. When we lower expectations and we water down education, we're actually hurting our students. And it became very obvious that for whatever reason, over the course of time, whether it was the SOLs or whatever, there was this huge shift. And now a lot of education, I feel like, is teaching to this SOL. There's such an emphasis on this SOL, and whether that's a good thing or bad thing, I don't know, that's a huge debate. But we have to have expectations that are high for our children so that they can succeed. And when they're getting out of high school and they're going off to secondary, to, higher ed education, and they haven't sat for an exam, and they really haven't found any purpose and meaning to exams, all of a sudden they're going to fail and they're going to struggle. So again, we lower expectations, we just hurt our students. So I'm okay finding a middle there.
And then I think you said, Ms. Fachani, this is an intermediate step, toward raising those standards. When the whole, grading policy is, that work is completed, to go into effect the following year, we'll even come back and revisit this as well. This is a great middle step just to sort of head that direction.
Yeah, and again, it's not 20% like it was
Right.
yesteryear. 10% is not a tall order.
But it's still meaningful.
Yeah, it's meaningful.
Okay.
And it's not a ghost town at the end of the school year, which is exactly what was happening.
Yeah. So, if there's no objection, we can put that on consent for next time either, unless you want on action for more discussion or.
We can do, I'm okay with consent.
Yeah, it's, uh,
We're gonna have to change the wording somewhere, you alter that.
I'm gonna make those
Mr. Ray?
changes.
I guess I just wanted to clarify, we know, but I mean, for the folks that are listening in or watching, parties involved in this, for those changes, can you sort of say who was involved, how we got about, this change?
So the committee, is that what, I don't know a whole lot about this committee.
So elementary has one work group going, secondary, Mr. Riley couldn't be here this evening. They've got another work group going with, involving teachers or curriculum supervisors. In fact, at the secondary level, the work has shifted to our curriculum experts, by subject, because, like Ms. Fachani pointed out, the goal for secondary is to better standardize how the grading, as we mentioned before, how that's set up, across the board. But that can vary by subject area. So we wanted their leadership in making sure that what makes sense for chemistry might look different than band class or, art class or, social studies. And so that's where that work is continuing.
Yeah, I know
at the
about
secondary
that.
level.
I just want to make sure that the public, they knew that the committee, we looked at this, they looked at this, and then presented it to us, so.
Right.
Mr.
Nothing
Vice Chairman,
goes-
would you be opposed to putting this on, rather than consent, have it be an action item at the next meeting with
Yes,
Mr. Hudson
absolutely.
not being here? And that would also give the public who's listening to this today time
to digest it.
To
Sure. I'm okay with that
provide
too,
any
if everybody
feedback.
else okay. Okay?
Yeah, that's
All right,
fine.
that's fine, yep.
That's fine.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, thank you. Never a bad thing to give more time. All right, let's see, item 3.06, consolidation revisions to policies on patriotism, Superintendent Nicely.
All right. Do I need to do a control F8 or is it going to happen automatically? Okay.
You might have to have that.
You've lost control now.
It's
gone. There we go. There we
All right.
go.
All right, I actually have a hard copy for you all as well. It's in board docs, but just for ease of reading. Mr. Ray.
Thank you.
Ken knows I like paper.
I do too, Ms. Fajani.
Sorry. Like to feel it, touch it.
Okay, so this is the language of the final consolidation of the patriotism policy. This is actually something that currently is in place. We have a patriotism policy. In reviewing that policy as well as ones related to it, we noticed that while we have a policy on patriotism, we also have separate policies which were kind of duplicative about the Pledge of Allegiance, the posting of the Bill of Rights, which is required by state law. Both those things are. In that review, we also noticed that the national motto, which we do, the schools display in conformance to state law, that's something we do, but for some reason it wasn't included in policy, but it should be. So what we've done is we're recommending that these separate policies just be streamlined for simplicity, combined into the one current policy on patriotism. So that'll be 3.13. We'll eliminate the others, along with the addition of correcting the absence of the reference to the national motto. We'll put that in, and then we also would like to add in language about patriotic holidays that fall during the school year. and encourage those, those observances in our schools. Our schools already do a great job with, like, Veterans Day. They're doing such a wonderful job, especially at the elementary school.
Those are wonderful
Even in
programs.
secondary, but just, we discussed with the principals on Monday that, if they don't do something, that's, even at that secondary level, you can invite, veterans in to a history class, right, and have discussions. It doesn't have to be a big, an assembly or something, but, do something related to that. It's always a good thing for our students to be exposed to.
Could also be a field trip.
Oh, absolutely, right. We have the D-Day Memorial right down the road and things like that. So
Our schools do a great job with that.
They
They
do.
really do.
they do. So there's no objection or questions. We'd like to put that on consent for the next meeting.
That works.
Okay, good. All righty, thank you. 3.07, new policy for curricular and non-curricular school and classroom displays. Superintendent Nicely.
And this is actually going to affect two policies, which I'll explain. So just some things that I wanted to share with opening comments, and what I'd like to do is kind of read through or recommending, for this new policy. Just for some background, the school board did request that a new policy be drafted, and I have hard copies of that too, so I'll pass those out. Sorry about that. I saw you hunting for them.
Thank you, sir.
And this is the other one, Mr. Ray. Sorry to make you get up again. Nope. It's all right. But the school board had requested that a new policy be drafted to clarify what the expectations of the school board are for employees regarding displays, especially during school division time, property, and resources. The new policy really does not represent a change in philosophy for the school division, nor frankly a change in practice for the majority of our employees. And I do want to add that we certainly value and respect all of our employees, regardless of their background, who they are. That's not what this is about. We do have great teachers and staff committed to providing a safe and supporting environment for our students. That is what this is about, including students who struggle and need extra care and support. Just to remind the board, we do have excellent dedicated resources to safeguard the well-being of all of our students, including emergency tip lines for students who struggle. We have trained counselors, but our focus really does need to remain and can continue to remain on our students, their learning and their well-being. We can disagree philosophically about how to best demonstrate that, but what we can agree on is that what we're about in our job as educators is to teach students their curriculum in ways that are engaging and purposeful. We call that deeper learning here in Roanoke County, and frankly in an environment that promotes respect and the values of character education, which Virginia law requires us to do. And that alone, by the way, is hard work, teaching the students their math and doing that in a kind, supportive environment. So when we do that and do that well, we're doing well. And frankly, we have great teachers who work hard and do it well. So the purpose of this new policy is to formally clarify school board expectations about our primary role as educators, focused on student learning and the manner in which we demonstrate care and inclusivity and create a sense of belonging for our students, which we believe this is most effectively done through our daily actions as we show kindness and respect to everyone in the school community. So the proposed policy does have a background section just to sort of create some context, and someone's going to read through that. And it reads as follows. The policies of the Roanoke County School Board support the establishment and operation of schools focused on the educational goals and objectives of the school division and committed to the principles of non-discrimination, equal opportunities, and tolerance. And that includes all protected classes of individuals as enumerated in state and federal law and school board policy. We're committed to these principles, absolutely. The Roanoke County School Board strives to maintain a learning environment in which all students can reach their highest potential. The school board believes this is best achieved in supportive and respectful environments in which teachers focus on their curriculum and learning objectives for their particular courses of study. The third paragraph is just straight out of our policy 6.02 existing policy, but just to add some more context, and that is the Roanoke County School Board recognizes that preparation for effective citizenship is one of the major purposes of education, and the preparation for effective citizenship includes the study of issues that can be controversial. But study of those things have to be carried out in an atmosphere free of bias, prejudice, or coercion. Personal beliefs about political views, social political issues, or religion are often deeply held and personal to many members of the school community and their families. I think one of the ways that as educators we best demonstrate cultural competency, which we've talked about, is knowing, the folks that you're working with in your community. So out of respect for the diversity of personal beliefs represented in our school community, school and classroom decor and displays should contribute to and not distract from a school environment free from bias, prejudice, or coercion. So the purpose of the policy is for classroom decor and displays are intended to support the curriculum and learning objectives of Roanoke County Public Schools and contribute to a learning environment in which all students are valued and supported regardless of their beliefs about political views, social political issues, religion, or their status as a member of a protected class of individuals as found in state and federal law and school board policies. So the policy itself, we're recommending as follows. This is regarding school and classroom decor and displays. Number one, all classroom displays must directly relate to the curriculum and instructional goals of the courses of study conducted in that classroom. So that's the foundational principles. What we do relates to the curriculum. I know as a teacher, that's one of the things I did. I mean, I used my bulletin board space to reinforce the things that I was learning in class. That's what we do as educators. Number two, employees may not use their position or use school or classroom decor and displays to advocate for their personal beliefs about political views, social political issues, or religion to students. The school board recognizes the right of employees as citizens to engage in political activity and advocacy on issues important to them outside of the classroom. But school division time, resources, property, or equipment, however, may not be used for such purposes by any employee. Thirdly, and this is, I think, an important point in terms of how schools need to operate and be set up. So the third point says the school board recognizes that school and classroom decor and displays may communicate multiple intended or unintended messages. A sticker, sign, flag, or other display hung by a teacher may be intended to show support or affinity for a subset of students, but it can unintentionally imply that other teachers who did not display such messages or symbols in their classroom do not support inclusion for their students, or that students who do not share the same identity are unwelcome. All teachers and other employees are expected to demonstrate care, respect, and support for all their students. And I just want to reiterate, I think our teachers do a great job with this. That's definitely where their heart is. All classrooms must be safe for students' physical, intellectual, emotional, social, and psychological growth and well-being, and therefore no subclassification system will be implemented within the school except as authorized and designated by approved school safety and emergency response plans. That last part is in there because you could designate certain rooms like for tornado purposes, this is a safe space for tornadoes, or emergency shelters and things of that sort. That comes through emergency plan. But in terms of otherwise designated classes, some classes as, quote unquote, safe spaces, which I know, again, are well intended, but it also implies that other folks who don't display those kinds of things, are somehow not a safe space. And that's just not philosophically what we believe as a school system. We really have to believe that every single classroom, every single employee is dedicated to the safety and well-being of our students. Some exceptions and little caveats here are found in number 4. Just to be clear for folks, because we can do our best to put things in writing, but then we can have different interpretations. But just to be clear, nothing in this policy should be interpreted, A, to preclude any employee from wearing symbols on discrete personal jewelry or having personal items that are meant to be viewed by the employee rather than by students. B, nothing should be interpreted to contravene RCPS policies promoting school rules, school behavior expectations, patriotism, character education. Those things might not be part of the history curriculum, but they are part of the school operation. And so those things are definitely meant to be there. C, nothing in the policy should be interpreted to preclude displays, the sole purpose of which is decorative. And what that basically means is, look, we don't want to have barren, sterile environments in our classrooms. We want decorations that's decorative, as long as those decorations are not meant to be an expression of political, social, political, or religious views, or otherwise a cause of disruption. And then D, Nothing in the policy should be interpreted to preclude decor displays related to school-sponsored clubs. And that idea of school-sponsored applies to everything on that list. So school-sponsored clubs, school-sponsored athletic teams, extracurricular activities, or, school-sponsored special events. And then finally, nothing should be interpreted to preclude displays related to, accredited colleges, universities, or the military. Those things could be considered decorative, but somebody may not consider it that way, and so we want to put that as an exception. Be explicit about that. So, with that, I just want to conclude by saying, our teachers and staff are good people who truly care about our students. And we also appreciate the school board's direction and clarification about how we can best do that.
Any comment, any questions?
It's all employees. That's what it states, of course, but it's not just, you think about just staff, teachers, or, it's all employees.
Yes, sir, and thank you for bringing that up, because the second, just to be consistent and because this goes under the instructional section of the policy manual, but this idea, right, about what our role is, you're right, Mr. Rago, applies to all employees. And so also are recommending that in our existing policy 5.55, which are employee standards of conduct, that we add to the list that exact same language that we're proposing for this new policy about not using our position or using displays and so forth to advocate our personal beliefs on school time. You can do those things outside of school time, but just not during school time and on school property.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, any commentary? All right, thank you, Dr. Nicely. Let's see, 3.08, adoption of resolution of intent to
Are we gonna put that on consent agenda
Is
or
that going to be
action?
an action item, or is
Okay.
that going to be?
recommendation. Consent agenda?
Typically we put it on consent unless you want further discussion. If you feel like there needs to be further discussion, we would typically put it on action. So it's at the pleasure of the board.
Brent's not here, but I'm sure he supports this policy.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it being on consent agenda.
Any discussion?
You have gone over this with principals, and it's been
Yes, sir.
well
We met with the
received?
principals on Monday to frankly get their feedback, because they're the ones, working with folks in the front lines, and they may see something that we may miss. In fact, one of the additions about including military kinds of things was one of the suggestions that came out of that discussion. So they were appreciative of having a policy like this and did give some feedback.
Yeah, and, I would just add that, Ken, thank you for explaining the policy. I think you did a great job in reading through it. We can't forget that our public schools are just that. They're public institutions, and they serve all the people. And what we need to do is make sure that our schools are neutral and that they don't bring into play any social, political issues. And public schools, it's important to have policies and put into practice, and we should aim to always find a balance. And, we have to strike a balance with the rights and respect of people and the beliefs. And at the same time, we have to ensure that it's an inclusive environment for all our students, and it's a safe environment. And I think this policy does just that. And I support the policy.
Okay, thank
I
you.
just,
Mr. Ray?
I guess I just got the question if it's on consent, or would we have, have the opportunity for the public to come and at least speak to that if we did, or, I'll go with the majority, but I just didn't know if you wanted to think if, you wanted this presented at a formal board meeting.
I'm okay if you want to put it on an action
Action.
item. I don't care.
Doesn't matter
to
It
me.
may be,
It's fine with me.
but we all in agreement anyway, so.
Yeah.
I think the issue that we have is this policy is coming out right before school starts. So typically, in terms of transparency and everything else, I wouldn't say this is something that we should, I would like to wait on it. I think that we're huge consensus on this board that we're moving in the direction of this policy. It's not even a question. But for the public, I would always like to give them 30 days. I think we should have that as a standard practice for the public to provide comment and things like that. But in the interest of time, where we're headed. It's just unfortunate that it took a little bit of time to get this going.
Well, and I
So,
think, that, if we do an action, it's still gonna happen on the next meeting, so I don't think that's a big issue. So anytime we give public an opportunity to come listen or speak, I think it's a good thing. So Mr. Ray's recommendation, if y'all are okay with it.
Yeah, it's
I would
fine.
say we put it on an action item. And just to finish up that point, the one thing that I've heard over and over through all of this discussion is the safety of our staff, the safety of our students. I don't think there's a person on this board that would do anything policy-wise, procedurally, or otherwise that wouldn't expect the protection and respect and safety of our staff and our students. We go to extraordinary lengths to make sure that our staff and our students are safe and respected, and we will not remove any of those barriers. So we will continue to make sure that they are, this is a safe place for everyone. And I go back to the SRO issue. We fought like crazy to get that approved for funding. So no issues with safety in our schools. And I'll even go one step further and let it go, because I probably should quit talking. But, to have Roanoke City Council members come over here and tell us anything about safety is disingenuous and discouraging. So, while I respect everyone's opinions, I think Roanoke County leads the way in safety. So, thank you, and we will move on to item 3.08, adoption of resolution of intent to reimburse with future bond sale. Ms. Susan Peterson.
Good afternoon, everyone. In anticipation of the future bond issuance for the design and construction of the new CTE Center and the Glen Cove and W. Cundiff Elementary Schools,
Bless you.
I recommend that we adopt the attached resolution. The adopted resolution allows the school division to reimburse itself for any spending between the time this resolution is signed and the bonds are issued in about a year. The County of Roanoke issues our bonds on our behalf because school divisions in Virginia cannot issue that. They have passed this language through their bond counsel, who did approve all of the language that is in the resolution. They will be adopting a similar resolution at their August 22nd meeting of the Board of Supervisors. This is a normal step anytime we are getting ready to construct or renovate a school, and we have bonds that will be part of the process. And so this is just normal business procedures that have to be done, and I just recommend this go under consent agenda at the next meeting.
Any discussion?
Okay.
No. I would like to ask, if you don't mind, because our meetings now that they're once a month, it's a little bit of time in between. Can you send us, look, can I give her a hard time? Could you send us an email with where we're at on major, minor, and what's the one for maintenance?
CMP.
CMB. Could you send that out to us just so we have
I'll do that. It'll also be attached to the consent agenda at
for the
next
net,
meeting.
right, but I'd like to have it before then if it's okay.
Yep, I'll do that.
Thank
for sure.
you. All right, nothing else. We'll go to item 3.09. Request to accept a $100,000 grant donation for school lunch debt. Ms. Susan Peterson, and I'm sure we don't want this, right?
No, never.
Just to
Be
clarify,
careful.
Mr. Chairman, the resolution could go on consent for next time.
Yes, yes.
And Ms. Fashani, that's what I was doing in my office as soon as I received the check.
Aren't you glad I asked that question?
I am. Wow. So earlier this week, we received a check for $100,000 from the Alan and Michelle Sheff Family Fund at the Community Foundation for Greater Buffalo. Within the letter, they did designate the funds to be used for school lunch debt. As of June 30th, we have just over $99,000 of student debt accumulated. I am presenting this information to you today so that hopefully it can roll into consent agenda at the next meeting so that we can apply the funds to the student debt. If we do that, then starting school next year, Again, we'll have a clean slate. It's just an interesting back fact for you. You know, when we were in COVID, we wiped out everyone's debt at that time because every student ate for free under the federal guidelines where they waived the National School Lunch Program. And so we are blessed by having this check to allow us to kind of begin our clean slate again. And then next year we will have Northside Middle School and Northside High School will participate in the Community Eligibility Provision Program, where every student at those schools will eat for free, like several of our elementary schools do in the current year. So that we anticipate next year at this time, we will accumulate more debt, but we don't anticipate it to be quite to this level since we will have 2 less schools on the debt. We did speak with Mr. Jason Sheff, and he will attend the next board meeting on the 27th, and Mr. Lineberger will help draft a nice resolution that we can present to Mr. Sheff for this generous donation.
Is he local?
I think so, but I think he has ties to New York.
Okay.
How do you
I don't
think
think he's the
somebody?
same Jason Sheff who apparently was a lead singer for Chicago at the beginning of his life. I think it's a different Jason Sheff.
You're
You
dating
remember
yourself.
that, 25 or 6 to 4?
Yeah. Well, how do you think somebody that has done this? I mean, that's an amazing, but he will be here at our next meeting, so
Yes, sir.
we're good. And I would love to say, is there something we can do? But I don't know how you thank somebody other than a heartfelt thank you. Maybe a resolution, I'm sure y'all are working on that or something.
Mr.
but
Lineberger is working
Yeah,
on
he's
that.
working on
and
I wish there was
maybe a-
something I wish we could give him something to say thank you.
We will.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
He's got it covered.
Hopefully it's not a school lunch. Sorry. But,
Girl.
well,
Or if it is, it's pizza day.
well, pizza day, okay, I'll take the hot dog.
You know what? Those people are gonna give you that.
Well, you know,
Say
it's too, it'd be
nothing
too
bad.
small for me. It'd be too small. I need
yeah.
more, I need more.
No, they
No,
would believe
actually, they're
that
actually
for me.
pretty good sized.
Well, I'll have to say, I know everyone jokes about a school lunch.
I know, I
being
shouldn't have said that. I'm gonna end up in the
Um,
news now for that,
but I've
right?
actually-
Jeez Louise.
She said it.
The new supervisor has her team, her field managers, spent all summer coming up with new menu ideas, new items to try out. They're bringing back, I don't want to steal her thunder, but I think they're bringing back full entree salads at the high school, which
Yeah.
we haven't had in a while. And they're testing things like, they gave me some chickpeas that were baked with seasonings on them that were delicious to put on the salad, so they can have kind of a Southwest flair. So they're really going to introduce some new and fresh menu items that hopefully will encourage our students to participate and
And to eat
enjoy.
healthy,
And
hopefully.
eat healthy, yes.
So we're going to eat school lunch?
Why would you say that?
I
so
know, I'm
young,
just too
man?
healthy. I wasn't looking at you.
We do have Mr. Stroud on board to come to the next work session.
was gonna ask.
Right, because you'd asked
Okay.
about the food.
type of-
Like, it has to be prepackaged stuff, and how that might work, and then also.
The type
about
one.
yeah.
Yeah, and so let me say this, and maybe not all board members know this, I think Mike will remember this. When we came on the board, and I can't remember what was the lady that would just retire?
Miss Huffman.
Miss Huffman, great, Rhonda Huffman, Miss Rhonda Huffman, did a wonderful job of taking us from in the red to getting us out of the hole. And so,
Self-supporting.
yeah,
Yes.
so,
$1 million.
there might have been some things in there that kind of blanded a little bit of the meals because she was digging us out of a hole that was left previously. So she did a great job, and so we kid a little bit, but honestly.
No, the school lunches are great,
That's right,
for the
that's
record.
right. We know.
For a gift for $100,000 to present a
Look, it's
school
too
lunch tray
late.
would just, was
It's
just,
too late.
okay.
It's too-
So I just have a question before we adjourn. So we're gonna do that work session, and she's gonna present to us how we could repurpose food, if you will, or gift food that's unused and untouched, because I think is a huge amount of waste with these meal trays that they have to take everything that's on the tray, and she'll get into that. The other question I have for you is, moving forward, how do we prevent that $100,000 debt from accumulating again? We had talked about phone calls, reminders, things like that, so that we don't tax our system with that. Do you have a plan in place that you're gonna talk about, or,
I can make sure she can touch base on all of that.
okay, because that, we
There's
don't wanna end
not
up.
a whole lot that we can do because the federal government really ties our hands,
Mm-hmm.
other than reaching out to the parent and let them know,
That's-
pay.
yeah.
There's not a whole heck of a lot.
I think last year, because so many people were a part of that free lunch program, they just thought that lunch was free again, is my understanding. So any communications we can give to allow people to understand that's not the case unless you qualify. And there are a lot of people who I think do qualify but don't fill out the necessary paperwork to do that, to make sure from the beginning of the school year that they filled that paperwork to know that they can qualify.
It's one of those things, I mean, this is my personal commentary, you know. I know what the intention is of, you have like a no shaming policy where you don't say something to the student and say, hey, by the way, you owe money or something like that. I mean, I get that, but on the other hand, I mean, I just think about it's also a way of teaching responsibility. And we should, you know, remind the students and instill that. But that's,
Sometimes they
that's
just
my 2
don't,
cents.
sometimes they just don't know,
Yeah.
you know? Or
Right,
there's
right.
just a lack of communication between a parent and a child, and we need to take that one extra step. So that's just what I would hope to see.
Mr. London?
Yeah, on a different topic, if I may, with the delay in adopting a state budget, is there anything that we should be concerned with until that is adopted?
No, we took several measures. We were very aggressive with providing the step increase and implementing not the step increase, but implementing the new pay plan and ensuring that the different employees had, on average, I think it was a 7% raise for non-teachers and about an 8% raise on average. These are averages for your teachers. In implementing that, we have a $2 million reserve emergency fund that we can fall back on if we need to, if the revenue just doesn't come forth. So that covers us. But then also, if you recall, when we came back for the last revision, there were several pieces that were related to the school resource officers that we freed up funds and put that into a reserve account. We just put the $43,000 from the school counseling into a reserve fund. And so all of these are kind of building back our kind of lapse fund, if you will, that hopefully will be in place to cover us. So I feel comfortable right now that we aren't going to run into an issue, but I've not been able to get an updated kind of employee roster because from the time we adopt the budget until the time school starts, Mr. Bradshaw goes through tons of movement of folks, hiring and folks leaving us. And so all of that comes into play, and as soon as they can get the new employees and the roster enrolled over for the new year, it can provide us an updated roster. We can run it through the budgeting process and have a better feeling for where we stand.
Having said that, we are deeply concerned, you know, I mean, not just for Roanoke County, but just across the state, because, and I've reached out to our legislators to let them know that, because the money's there, the money's available, you know, at the state level, they just can't agree on how to, you know, apply it. So we need to work out some kind of compromise, because truly, I mean, we do have that $2 million reserve safety net emergency fund, but we really don't want to have to use that, right? Because you have to replenish it if we do. So I'm glad we have it, so it's not a huge risk for us because of that, but we also don't want to be in a position where we have to use it. So we would urge those conferees to, you know, reach some kind of agreement.
You want me to give you my ideas on ways to cover that?
I always love to hear your ideas,
Well,
Mr. Greenway.
I think with the reduced funding that we get from our friends on the other side, they would be glad to help us if we have any issues and not have to dip into that emergency fund. Thank you. Mr. Ray, you have anything?
I was going to ask about funding, but, you know.
Same question?
thing.
Okay. All right, if nothing else, unless Ms. Roberson wants us to stick around. No, okay, all right, then we're adjourned.